In this presentation, I'll be discussing safety, gauge calibration, how to use, and how to properly store a nuclear density gauge. For safety with the nuclear density gauge, you'll typically be in an environment where you'll need a hard hat, a vest, and steel-toe boots. But since I'm just in a parking lot in this demonstration, I will not have those on. It is important to have your badge on you to see if there's any radiation leaks with the Troxler density gauge. It is important for you to be in control of the environment around you. If there are people around the Troxler, make sure they're always a few feet away from it to make sure that there's no radiation or leaks or anything like that that they could be affected by. The last safety concern is always make sure that you take your test on a flat surface so that no radiation leaks on either side of the Troxler. After we know the site is safe, we will then begin with the gauge calibration. You will begin by putting a plastic reference block underneath the Troxler and make sure that the Troxler is flat on the reference block. After you have turned your device on, which takes about 4 minutes just to get warmed up, you will press the standard button for the calibration and it will say take new count ? And you will push enter. When you're done with the gauge calibration, which takes generally about 3 to 5 minutes, then you'll be ready for your testing of the different sites. After the gauge calibration is done, it will show up on the screen what your percent compaction and moisture is, which is the standardized results for the area that you're in. And you will then use these, or the Troxler will then use these at the end to help determine what your actual results for the typical spots are. After you're done with the gauge calibration, the necessary tools that you'll need to create your testing area will require a drill rod, a hammer, and a scraper plate. And like I said, this is for you to hammer down the drill rod and it will create a spot for you to test your area with the Troxler. Before we put the Troxler on the spot that we're testing, we need to make sure that it's flat and that there's no large rocks. After you have all the necessary tools, we are ready to start testing. But before we take the test, we'll need to drill the drill rod into the ground so that the Troxler is able to measure that specific spot. So we'll do this by banging into the ground. And then pulling it out. After I've made the hole with the drill rod, I will then push the source rod into that hole to test the percent compaction of moisture of that area. Generally, you want to have the hole about 6 to 12 inches just to make sure that you're getting a good sample of it with the Troxler. Before you take the test, you can decide how long of the time the test will be. So you can press time and you can choose between 15 seconds, 1 minute, and 4 minutes. And this will it will make it more accurate the longer it is. But if you just want a ballpark, you can just hit 1 for 15 seconds and then you can take your test by hitting the start button. On the screen, your percent compaction is given by percent PR and your moisture is given by percent M. For this test, we got a 69.3% compaction and a 14% moisture. The 14% moisture is very typical, but the 69.3% compaction would typically fail on any project. If you're building a road or a landfill or anything like that, the ground beneath it would generally have to be 95% compaction to 100. So the 69.3 would not cut it. After we have taken our tests and analyzed our results, we are now ready to put the Troxler back into the box. This is very important because Troxlers have radiation and they're typically stolen. We will begin by locking the source rod with a specialized master lock, and then we will place the Troxler carefully into the box. We will then close the box, and there's 2 spots to lock the Troxler box. You need to make sure to have one locked but both closed, just so that no one can get into the Troxler box that is not certified. So we will lock this one, and we will just close this one. If you're ever transporting the box from point A to point B, you need to make sure that the Troxler box is locked to your vehicle. So find a hitch or anything that you can lock it to in the back or the trunk of your bed, and lock it up so that you make sure that if you go into a restaurant or gas station, that no one is able to steal the Troxler. In this demonstration, I hope you learned how to properly handle a Troxler, and you know the health risks, the gauge calibration, how to use it, and how to properly store it and transport it.